Mark and Pete.
Hello, and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. This is the show dedicated to religion, politics, and business. This week's topical subject is the key question of, is relaxing Sunday trading against God's law? Well, shops in England and Wales could be allowed to open for longer on Sundays under the current plans made by Chancellor George Osborne. The proposal is to give further authority to elected mayors and councils, those being the local councils, to have powers to relax all of the laws to trade on a Sunday. But what are the implications on this? Some bodies, for example, like the Association of Convenience Stores, said that some small shops could actually struggle. Others believe that this would actually be a great opportunity to increase the economics in retail. For example, some people actually believe that it could amount to more than £200 million a year in additional sales in London alone. Well, there are also many other implications of opening up trading laws. So with me today is clergyman Pete. So Pete, what's your view on how Sunday trading could impact on your business?
Well, my business, as I'm a clergyman, not a businessman, is of course filling the pews and getting bums on seats in churches, and of course encouraging people in their faith journey and all that sort of thing. But people turning up to worship on a Sunday, would it be affected by competition elsewhere? I really don't think it would. I think that would have been true in the past when there was nothing to do on a Sunday. There's no entertainment on a Sunday. But now the amount of entertainment available on a Sunday is quite varied, and it's already in place. And so those who want to do that rather than come to church have done that, and I guess good luck to them, because they obviously didn't really want to be in church anyway. It seems a bit callous, but I mean, it does have a sort of a weeding out process, having opportunities to do other stuff. I'm not against that at all. People being forced to work and not being able to come on a Sunday, well, actually, that's unlikely to happen, in that church services are at different times, varying times. You can have them in the morning, have them in the evening on a Sunday, so it wouldn't really affect that either. You might have to change the time of your service. So I am not worried about this having an effect on church attendance, but I am worried about it.
Yes. Well, there are many people who are worried for different reasons. So for commercial reasons, some people believe that it will put greater pressure on employees to work longer hours. And it could mean that some companies, particularly small businesses, will find that very, very difficult to compete against some of the big national operators. So, for example, if you're a small high street retailer and you may only employ a few dozen people, if you're competing against some of the big nationals, and we know who they are, we won't mention them, but the fact is that could mean that, yet again, it's going to really impact on small businesses. So that's one level. Of course, the other level is that some people actually see that it's sacrilege. How on earth could anybody continue trading on such a sacred day? Well, I have a little poem here which just gives my opinions on this subject. So I'm going to read it to you now. And this poem is entitled Sunday or Sin Day Service. The Trading of Tradition. Give us today our daily bread, for the Sunday service is truly dead. This holy day has become commercial. Cashing in seems controversial. All-day shopping trades in tradition. The Bible has bargains in the next edition. Community spirits have sold their souls, replaced by discounted toilet rolls. Churchgoers lost to shopping aisles. A devilish deal soon beguiles. The pews are empty, the pulpit's free. The vicar has fled on a spending spree. Church bells chime to heavenly offers, filling fonts like retail coffers. So, grab absolution under the spire before all faith does expire. Yes.
Yes, I can see that you are looking at the problem. You're too worn out from your work, as you're hinting at there, to actually be engaged in anything else. You just need, when you have any time off, to not be doing anything. Now, that is an issue. People getting too tired is certainly an issue. Relaxing the Sunday trading laws, I think, does present great difficulties. Not that I'm afraid of the competition to church services, but rather something else. I think that it's going to be very bad for the workers who have to do this. Not necessarily each individual, but generally speaking, it's going to be bad for the workforce of Britain.
Yes.
And secondly, I think it's going to be bad for the country as a whole to lose this weekly rhythm completely.
Yes. Well, I'm interested to also understand how the government feels that this will impact on business. So here's a simple quotation. Now, this was given by the Small Business Minister, Anna Soubry. Now, she conducted an interview with the BBC recently, and this was about consultation on the proposal, first of all. But there was an interesting quote. So Miss Soubry also warned against harking back to a world that probably didn't exist. We are of that generation where Sunday, truthfully, was the most miserable day of the week. Now, I must admit that you could argue there was something in that. The only thing to look forward to, as she said, was to sing something simple on the radio. Goodness me, if that didn't sum up a miserable Sunday. Well, that's probably a bit of a cynical view, but it is true that perhaps, in today's, cut and throat world that we live in, where you need to have every possible working hour to have that competitive edge. I think that that's true, but I do agree about exploitation. But isn't this, let's look at the wider picture, isn't there something more simple here? It's not just about, just simply opening up trading hours. Surely there has to be some form of legislation which protects the employee. So, for example, if it's just opened up to the 7 days a week, yes, I could see that potentially there'll be an awful lot of pressure to work Saturdays and Sundays, let alone the main 5 days of the working week, the core working week. But if there was some mechanism in there which meant that, again, it was imperative that people didn't work beyond a certain set of hours, surely that would just mean around more flexibility in the working week. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
Yeah, well, I think that there is a natural rhythm to life, and I think that you need to have that 1 day off a week, not because a religion says so, not even because God says so, just simply because we need that time of rest and recuperation on a weekly basis. And the 7 day a week thing has worked. It's become you could say, if you don't believe that God ordained it, you can still say by trial and error we arrived at it. Either way, for many, many years, we have realized that 7 days a week is needed, and one of those days need to be off. So you work for 6 days, you take 1 day off. And that's the rhythm that we need in our lives. And if we take that away, then we are worn down, and actually we're less productive. And there's been various studies done to show that that's the case, that we're actually less productive working all the time. You need to take the time off. Now, that's been done on a smaller scale. You need to take a break during the day, and there are laws in place to make sure that you take a lunch break. You have to take it. Yeah. You can't choose not to. I remember working in a company and wanting to work through, so that I could leave earlier, but wanting to work through and get the work done, but I wasn't allowed to. And quite right, because of course that is bad. Maybe I could have put up with it for a bit. I was only working there temporarily, but generally, to allow that to happen is bad for people. So, of course, they must enforce you have to take at least half an hour off in order to have that recuperation. There should be the same thing in place to allow people to take a day off a week. Now, can it be flexible so that you take a different day off? Yes, of course it can, and I do that myself. Yeah. My day off is Saturday, and I work on Sundays. So I don't take Sundays off. Sunday's a working day. Yeah. But I think that that's not the same as saying that generally everyone just ignores Sunday and Sunday's a different, the same day as every other, because there's such a thing as the whole country. There's a feel to the whole country. And this is sometimes sidelined when thinking about this sort of issue. It's poo-pooed. It's sort of as being, because it is nebulous, you can't say exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the overall feeling of the population, the way the country as a whole runs. And yet we know that it's true. There's a pattern, there's a flow to life. There were certain big events in Britain, like Wimbledon tennis championships. There's certain things that happen at a certain time of year that are part of the whole way that the country feels. And the taking off of a day each week, even though, of course, everyone can't take the day off. There's certain emergency services and other jobs that you need someone there working on a Sunday. Of course you do. And those people will need to take a different day off in the week.
Yes.
But you need that rhythm to the week for the sake of the whole economy, the whole way the country works, to have that ebb and flow to it. Yes. Otherwise, we're going to run into problems. Now, countries have done it in the past and found that it's a problem. Famously, after the French Revolution, they temporarily brought in a 10-day week, and that just simply didn't work. During the Second World War, munitions factories were working in this country, in Britain, 7 days a week, and the productivity, as we now know and would expect, went down. We need to stick to this rhythm of 1 day off a week, and it needs to be the same day. Now, that's not to say, however, that it has to be a Sunday. I'm just saying that it should be the same day.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I do agree with the idea of the rhythm of the week, because effectively you need that point of recuperation. Everybody needs that. I think that people would agree with it. But there does still seem to be conflict at different quarters. So, for example, Conservative MP Philip Davis is the vice chairman of the all-party parliamentary group of retail, said about Sunday was the most convenient day of the week for some people to go shopping. So, okay, that's his view. However, there are, of course, other people who might say, for example, welcoming the Chancellor's proposal on relaxing, of course, Sunday trading. Adrian Pepper from the Open Sundays campaign group said, restricting Sunday opening hours makes no sense. Essentially, other people, for example, the Association of Convenience Stores Chief Executive James Lohman said that giving local authorities responsibility for setting Sunday trading hours could lead to inconsistency and confusion for business and shoppers. I can see what he means there, because if there wasn't something that was standardized, for example, I'll just pick a region in the country, you could have somewhere like Birmingham could agree to do it, and somewhere like Manchester not. And that could be a bit confusing for the nation. There are other people who feel that the government has taken a bit of a U-turn on this. So John Hannett, who's Secretary General of the Shop Workers Union, USDAW, said the announcement was disappointing and the union campaign against it. He said that, meanwhile, campaign group Keep Sunday Special accused the government of a major U-turn, essentially saying that really this was never really on the cards. But I have another point here, which I think we ought to mention. Whether you agree that Sundays should or should not be a trading day, the reality is that actually we do have 24-hour shopping. Remember, what we're talking about here are retail stores. That's the bricks to clicks concept. So the click campaign are probably sort of wondering what's going on here in terms of their competition. That's the online trading. We can continue to trade online whenever we like.
Yes.
Now, that means basically there are people who are workers, whether they're in the warehouses, whether they're in administration, finance and marketing and so on, who actually have managed to find a way of working, albeit that their business is 24 hours. So I think it's worth mentioning that where people are looking at a more traditional way of retail, which of course has a major place in society today and in our business world, where again, when we literally open the doors and close the doors, but we also have to sort of say, well, look, here in the 21st century, we've got another competition here, which is the virtual world. They don't have restrictions.
No, they don't have restrictions. Maybe they should. Here's what I think about that. I think that you can have fewer staff working on a Sunday. You have to do that in all stores. Even if you close down shops, the security guard still needs to work. There's always going to be someone has to work. So you have a minimum staff running, say, Amazon or whatever the site is.
There are
other retailers are available, by the way. But just to take that as an example, they could certainly, people, you click, you get the thing the next day. Much of it is automated, so it's not the same sort of idea that you have to have someone serving you. You can need to have someone watching the system, but you don't. It's not people making a response, so it's not a problem having it going out on a Sunday, and then you could have an early start on Monday and get things started. So it would be possible to apply the laws to online retailers. Simply through making sure that only minimum staff are working. Not closing the store, but making sure that people still have that rhythm to life.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with the normal stores, the traditional stores where you have to go in and then being open, however, is not simply that there are people working there. The other thing is that them being open gives a different feel to every town, to the place where you live. Because they're physically open.
Yes.
So that they're giving a feel of the working week to a day of rest, and that is what we're talking about when giving a rhythm to the week, as well as the individuals having to go to work. So, but with an online store, if you're not actually shopping on your computer, tablet, or phone. Well, I mean, you shouldn't be. You should just be listening to the Mark and Pete show.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Which you can do on all those 3 devices, by the way, gentle listener. But look, the store in your pocket can be just switched off, and it's not apparent to other people, so it doesn't have the same sort of effect. And actually, the fact that online shopping is so easy to do these days makes one of the arguments for having 7 days a week shopping superfluous.
Yes.
It makes it irrelevant, because if you're saying, people need to be able to go shopping that day, well, no, they don't. They can just they can shop at any time by shopping online. So if all it is a necessity of shopping, well, most shopping you can do online. So that certainly isn't the case.
Yes.
I mean, perhaps we could take a look at what the Bible says. I mean, the Bible does clearly say about having 1 day of rest every 7 days, and it's based upon the fact that God made the world in 6 days. On the 7th day, He rested, so He had that rhythm to the week. And from this statement in Genesis on, or some people believe the other way, that the statement in Genesis was because people had realised that was what worked as a week. So, you could argue that it's the other way round that it occurred. But either way, I mean, I believe that it's a God-ordained way of working to have 6 days work and the 7th day off. But the Bible clearly presents this as something that is helpful to you. It's something for you to do, to help you, maybe to replace your batteries, to give you opportunity to worship the Lord. Jesus, on one occasion, it's recorded in Mark chapter 2, verse 23 onwards, was going through the grain fields on a Sabbath, the equivalent of our Sunday. And it says in that verse, as his disciples walked along, they picked up some heads of grain. They were getting food to eat.
Yes.
And the Pharisees said to them, look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath? Because, of course, the trading laws hadn't been relaxed at that time, in the time of Jesus. And Jesus answered, have you never read what David did when his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and gave some to his companions. And then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other words, this day of rest is for the benefit of humans, not the other way around. So he's looking at it not a law or an imposition, but as a privilege and a way to help people. So yes, of course, you have certain needs and requirements on a Sabbath, in this case, to eat. So yes, certain work does need to be done. But what it is, you need laws in place that allow people to take the day off, because otherwise they're going to be forced or have pressured to work on a day and to work on that day and to work every day.
Yes.
Now, just in closing on just talking about one saying the Bible, what it says in the Bible, I just want to clear up a possible misunderstanding that arises. That we're talking about the Sabbath then, which was a Saturday, and we're talking about it being a Sunday. And the reason for the movement for Christians was simply because Jesus rose from the dead on a Sunday. So they saw this as the start of a new creation, the start of a new week, the 8th day, if you like. So therefore, they started again, and the first day of the week was the Saturday. Then the first day of the week became the Sunday, and the Sunday was the day off, the day of worship, and then the rest of the week followed. But as to whether it was really a Saturday or Sunday, we can't really say, can you? Because do we really believe that every 7 days has been counted back without a break? They've always got it right, going back 2,000 years. I don't think that's really credible. I mean, we just happen to have given certain names to these days. So which one you call the Sabbath, you can just pick one and then make sure it's 1 in 7.
Yes.
And that's your Sabbath, or that's your Sunday. But I believe, as for all the reasons I've given before about the rhythm of the week, that it should be the same day for everyone, as far as possible.
I mean, I think that what's quite interesting is about this point of technicality. I think
yes.
I think that where there's a misconception is possibly about the trend here. So I think what's interesting is that the Chancellor actually did mention that there is a growing appetite, I say, quote from George Osborne, that there's a growing appetite for shopping on a Sunday, effectively evidenced through retail studies, etc., saying that there is some evidence that transactions for Sunday shopping are actually growing faster than those for a Saturday. Well, that may be true. We can obviously pore all over the figures. We won't do that on this show. However, the point here is that irrespective of whether that is the case or not, what we're really saying is there has to be a rest day. So if that means that there is a shift, and I can see a logic that why wouldn't it be that the day off is a Friday? It could be any day. I mean, the reason I say a Friday is because, interestingly enough, statistically, a lot of small businesses, and even large businesses, actually find that a Friday afternoon is one of their slackest periods, partly for the fact that people typically tend to sort of go away early, and partly for the fact that it's leading into a weekend. Maybe there is a case to say, look, actually, we do need a day off, but actually it doesn't have to be a Sunday. It could be that actually Sunday is a trading day, and there is that shift. So clearly some trends are showing that there is a shift in pattern of when people are picking their days to either shop, do business, and so on. Remember, the other reason is that it is actually difficult for a lot of companies to continue trading in the same way because they may be international. So, for example, we see, say, loosely, let's say if the day of rest was a Sunday here in Western Europe. But, of course, in the Middle East, that's very different. It's a normal day. And if you're trying to trade internationally, you may find that that's very difficult. Whereas if you could trade on a Sunday, you would be able to trade quite comfortably with people in those regions because, again, it's a normal trading day. So it may be what this does is it absolutely opens up another conversation to say maybe we should sort of try and standardize. I don't want to trivialize this, but interestingly, I noticed that the standardizing of the way that one regulates and analyze things comes to mind, where the pop charts, for example, have shifted from a Sunday to a Friday. This is something that, reason being is that, of course, people have different ways of downloading and purchasing. It was deemed that the purchasing of records actually was increased on a Saturday and a Sunday, effectively over the weekend. Why? Because that's when people typically tend to do it. So, of course, they have shifted their reporting and their analysis to a Friday. Now, maybe as a concept, that's possibly we need to look at that not just sort of from a provincial point of view. We need to sort of look at it from an international viewpoint.
Yeah, I take on board all that stuff about you were talking about being international and it being difficult to have a standardised day across the whole world. I don't think that's going to happen for political reasons. In that you won't have Christians moving their day to a Friday. They want it on a Sunday because they associate with Jesus rising from the dead. And people with other religious faith won't want to move their day. So I can't see that happening. But again, I don't think this is the issue, because although there are, of course, large numbers of people who need to trade in that way, the issue is the overall ebb and flow of things in a particular country. And I think it's so important that although it can impact on sales and people's profit margins, you still need to do it because it's that important. You're talking about the health of the nation, spiritual, emotional, and in the end physical health, by having this flow to the week. I think it's that important. I think that we shouldn't just give up the natural rhythm of the way that we live, because in doing so, you give up a lot that is difficult to get back. Imagine we're in a different situation and trying to impose a day off each week. That would be so difficult.
Well, let me ask you this one question, because we're coming to the end of the show on this subject. So, do you believe that if the laws are relaxed, irrespective of whether they are controlled by government or controlled by councils, do you believe that relaxing Sunday trading will have impact on the clergy, and particularly the parishioners that you see coming into your Sunday services?
Well, I think that there may be some impact initially as people get used to the different way of working. But I think that the longer term problem for people will be an eroding away of that rhythm of life. So I don't think that you'll see the deleterious effects until years and years down the line. So initially, maybe I'll see very little. I think that's the case. What was all the fuss about? But years down the line, as we see increasing levels of stress, we see increasing levels of people having to retire early because they can't cope with working anymore. As we see productivity levels reduce, I think then we'll see that it was a mistake.
So listeners, what do you think about this subject? Do you think that the relaxing of Sunday trading laws will have an impact on you? Do you think it's against God's law? We'd love to hear from you. Log on to markandpete.com and fill out the contact form. So join us again for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.